And Clio Barnard. Before we open it up to questions, I just wanted to ask you, I know this is set in the same world as your great documentary, The Arbor. I was wondering what attracted you to want to tell a fictional story set in this universe.
Yeah, when I was making The Arbor, I met a boy called Matty, and there's a street in Bradford called Brafton Arbor, and I met him when the very first time I went there, and then he was around the film set when I was shooting The Arbor, and really it was the character of Arbor and Swifty are very much inspired by him and his relationship with his best friend.
Obviously, this centers on two child performers, and their authenticity is very key to the film's success. Can you talk about the process of finding them and how you worked with them to get what we saw on screen?
I worked with the same casting director, a woman called Amy Hubbard, and we'd worked on The Arbor together, and we'd done an open casting in the school there before. So we knew exactly where to look, and also I'd done workshops right back at the beginning of the process before I started writing the script. So we kind of knew exactly where to look. And Connor, who plays Arbor, we actually found on the first day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which we weren't expecting that at all. And there's something in his voice that I really, really loved and made me want to see him again. And he's a very brilliant storyteller with a great instinct for stories. So it was very quick finding him. But initially we cast him as Swifty, and we were looking for an arbor. And then quickly worked out there was a neighbourhood nearby where there's a big horse culture, a lot of horses. And so we started looking there, and then found Sean, and he was reading in with all of the other kids who were coming in. And we got him and Connor together and realised there was chemistry, I guess, between them. And then made the decision to swap them around.
You brought up the horses, so I wanted to ask about that. Where did you get the idea for that to be such a central part of the story? And then can you talk about what it is like to work? You know, they say don't work with animals and children. What was it like to have to wrangle the horses in the film?
Well, in my experience, which is, 2 feature films, always work with animals and children, because it was great, actually. I loved working with the kids, and the horses were great. We kind of street classed the horses. So the rag and bone horse is a rag and bone horse, and the trotting horse is a trotting, the races on the roads. So we found this brilliant guy called Jimmy Tate who provided all the horses. And they were fantastic. Now I can't remember the question.
What inspired you to make horses so central to the story?
It was really because of Matty, because of this boy, because he actually didn't go to secondary school at all, and he has ADHD, and especially when he was a younger teenager, I think he was very volatile and I don't think people really knew quite how to handle him. And he got a horse when he was 11 and kept it in his backyard, and I think it really gave him he realised he was really good at something, and I think it changed things for him. So it was really through him that the horses were important.
And then, since you've already spent a lot of time, with the documentary about the neighborhood and people in it, what kind of responsibility did you feel towards the actual authenticity of any real people you'd be representing, and where did you feel you could take creative license for a narrative framework?
In some ways, because it was fiction, that meant it was a lot easier than in terms of the responsibility than The Arbor was. So for example, Matty really has this affinity with horses, but in order to make that work as a fiction, I had to kind of take that away and give that to Swifty, so that there was enough difference in their characters for that dynamic to work. So, and Matty and his family and that community really were very behind the film right from the start. So it was, that part of it didn't feel difficult.
We have time for questions from the audience. Yes, one right in front.
What was your method for preparing these actors? Did you do a lot of takes? Did you rehearse them a lot early on? Like, how did you prepare them to, get these dramatic performances across?
Yeah, we did some rehearsals, but the rehearsals were very it wasn't really the stuff that they were performing on set. So, first of all, we did just kind of getting to know each other, kind of getting comfortable with each other sessions. Then we did some kind of improvisation that were quite loose and quite broad, and then they kind of gradually became more specific. And so there were some things like I knew I needed Mrs. Swift and Connor to be physical with each other. So we did I kind of devised some scenarios so that they could figure that out. And we did some that were just within the families, two separate families, to get those dynamics working within those families. And we couldn't, I know some directors like to shoot in story order, but that wasn't an option for us. And also in some ways I don't really believe that that's necessary. I don't find that necessary. And I think that with both Connor and Sean, they've got brilliant imaginations, and that's part of the reason for casting them. So we talked a lot, and we kind of, talked about where they were, where Arbor was or Swifty was at any particular moment in the narrative, and then and work with that. And we did do quite a lot of takes. It would depend on what the scene was.
Right in the back.
Moving from the Arbor to this, can you just talk about some of the biggest difficulties or anything that you found different moving the narrative that was a challenge from going from documentary to narrative feature?
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird being able to make anything up that I wanted to. Because I guess when I was writing the script, I kind of thought, aliens could come down from the sky now if I wanted that to happen. That was quite strange and frightening, actually, in a weird way. And yeah, so I kind of felt better when I got the script to a point where it had its own logic, its own sort of internal logic, and that was difficult. Also, I'd never written a conventional screenplay before, and I'd directed actors before, but never in a more conventional way. So those things scared me a lot, and but ultimately it was a really good experience.
Yes.
As someone who's not seen your first film, and I'm going to rectify that as soon as possible, I'm curious to know more about this area and what drew you to the Arbor and what that sort of signified for you. It was obviously fascinating to watch. I would like to know a little bit more about that.
Well, I grew up not far from Bradford, and I grew up. So the previous film was about a playwright called Andrea Dunbar, and I'm not really a theatre person at all, but she was a playwright. But I knew Alan Clark's film adaptation of her plays, which is called Rita Sue and Bob 2, which I don't think is his best film, but I'm kind of fond of it because I'm the same generation as that filmmaker, and it's from the same part of the world where I grew up. So that's sort of what drew me back to that place. And really, I guess it was through making that film that I wanted to make this film. And my next film is not set in Bradford, but I've got a feeling there'll be a third.
Yes.
I was actually going to ask you, I heard you're doing an adaptation of Polly Stone's play, Tusk, and I just wondered if that's what you're working on next.
Yes, there are two things that I'm working on actually, so that's one of them, and I'm also doing an adaptation of a novel called Trespass by Rose Tremaine, which is set in France, and I don't speak French. That's quite scary, but and it's both of them are new challenges for me because I've never worked with a writer before, but which is great actually, in that her draft is almost ready to go, so I've given her notes and she's redrafting it at the moment.
We have time for one more. Yes, in the center.
I really appreciated your cinematography. Can you explain your relationship with your DP a little bit, and the reason you used long lenses so much? What was the reason for that?
I worked with a cinematographer called Mike Ely, and he was really brilliant to work with. He's very, very calm and very experienced. And really what we did was had a series of conversations before we started shooting about what we wanted to achieve. And in a way it was realism with a touch of something else, but it shouldn't ever go over into being stylized. And he's incredibly instinctive in the way that he works. So really what we did was I really focused on working with the actors, and we'd figure out a scene, and then we'd talk about where to put the camera. But a lot of the time it was him following what was going on and finding the boys really in a scene. And we talked about the landscape a lot and the part that played in the film. So that we kind of put time aside so that we could go and shoot the landscape and make that part of the narrative in some way. But when we started shooting, Connor and Sean, they hadn't been on a film set before. They hadn't filmed anything. So Mike would sort of move the camera around and find them, and they'd move away. So he kind of had to say, he's looking for you. So when he finds you, please don't step away. But yeah.
Everybody know, please thank Clio. Don't forget to vote. 6:30 here. We've got another show loading right in, and we've got